Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. This is Marta's Magical Mystery Class, and this is our 11th video on the drafting process. If you have been subscribing and watching them as the subscription is, as the videos are issued, or if you have been watching them on your own, but approximately every 2 weeks, that's how they're designed, then you may be as far as 50,000 words into the first draft of your first novel, and that's amazing. You're almost there. We're going to do 2 more of these drafting videos for 55,000 and 60,000 words respectively. And then we're going to take a break from this format in order to do some other things on the channel for NaNoWriMo. That's right. We're going to celebrate National Novel Writing Month here at Marta's Sci-Fi Seminar. And it should be a great time. Did I say Magical Mystery Class or Sci-Fi Seminar? This is the Sci-Fi Seminar. If I'm a little mixed up, it is because I am condensing these last few videos. They won't appear quite 2 weeks apart because I want to get them finished in October before I roll into the NaNoWriMo stuff in November. In November, the format just for NaNoWriMo is gonna switch up to being short videos every day of NaNoWriMo, no more than 5 minutes. I've just been this afternoon been outlining kind of what I'm gonna do, and it will be things like writing tips, tricks, some quotes from some of the books I've been reviewing, and you know, it's gonna be fun. I will update you also. I'm not starting a fresh project for NaNoWriMo. I know it's against the official rules, but in the spirit of the thing, without doing the actual thing, I'm gonna pull my work in progress out of mothballs where it's been all summer, put it back on the desk, and see if I can't finish the novella that I've been picking up and putting down all year. So we will see how that goes. I am not doing any reviews today. Instead, I am continuing our conversations about elements of fiction and other literary terms. The literary terms I'm going to talk about today are rising action and falling action. And I made visual aids. Very exciting stuff. Generally speaking, rising action is about raising the tension in a book. Falling action is really about letting that tension go, letting it down. We generally talk about that as something that happens at the end of a book. Although certainly, because the idea is, especially in a genre novel, you ratchet up tension, then you plateau for a while, you ratchet up tension again, and then you stay steady state, kind of plateau for a while. You don't really want to drop off tension mid-book, because then your readers drop off and go away, okay? So when we're talking about falling action, we're usually talking about what happens after the climax of a story, how things get kind of resolved. The French have a term, dénouement, which means like the untying or the unknotting. So when we're talking about falling action, that's really what we're talking about. And to be fair, standard narrative theory would have you believe that rising action goes like this and then comes to a climax and then falls off. And it's been kind of a standard thing to talk about that in terms of sexual excitement. Yeah, I think it's a pretty narrow view of that kind of experience. So I think the better metaphor is that of a roller coaster, actually. So I'm going to argue that every book is a roller coaster. Every book is a different ride. And we want a ride that's exciting and varied. And while the tension might go up, we want more from most books than just to get more and more and more and more anxious until that anxiety is relieved and we can put the book down and walk away. Yeah? a story that only, I promised visual aids, ta-da, says what extreme rising action would look like. Just straight acceleration right here, and then a little fall off here for falling action. Okay? In reality, that's probably achieved by a kind of loop. Okay? Raising of the tension, tightening of the screw, like this, or possibly something more like saw teeth on the side of a saw or a knife. Okay, all the way up and down. There really aren't a lot of books that give you zero break from rising action and then go straight into falling action. Those are books by folks like James Patterson, Ira Levin. Those are the two I can think of that I've read that I might describe this way. Possibly some of Dan Brown's books. And maybe I'm selling them all short to say, this is what happens. But thrillers probably get the closest to just doing this. If you're talking about roller coasters, this isn't really a very exciting ride. So most books don't do this in terms of their rising and falling action. Most books are a little more complicated. This is a lot more typical. Okay. Rising action to about the quarter point, maintaining that level of kind of intrigue, suspense, but moving you along in the story, then ratcheting the tension up with some kind of an event, again at the halfway point, till we get to the 75, okay? And then at 75, things may go up sharply, things may go up less sharply. You see 3 possible kind of branches here. And then generally things are going to fall off at about the 95% mark, okay? That's a pretty typical diagram about how rising and falling action happens in a lot of books, particularly genre novels. And I thought it would be fun, instead of doing reviews today, to look at some of the books I have recommended on this channel and talk about what they're doing that maybe incorporates this formula, but changes it up a little, varies things a bit. So the first one I thought to chart was my favorite. Again, my bid for the 2021 Hugo and Nebula Awards. Fenderson Djeli Clark's, P. Djeli Clark's A Master of Djinn. And I think Clark does a great job. We've got rising action right from the beginning up to about the quarter point. We have lots of things happening here that help build energy. We have lots of things that gather at the midpoint and then kind of move the novel up to the 75% mark. What happens after the 75% mark, I think, in Clark's novel, that probably has helped it stay the best book I've read this year, is there's a lot of sharp rising action. After 75%, we kind of get there, and instead of plateauing and maintaining a steady state and then having more excitement happen, no, we get to 75% and it's just a pivot, and the excitement goes a slightly different direction, but it goes up. And then we've got some notches really right up to the end. There's a little bit of falling action, but less than in most books. Things really get cranked almost to the very end. And then we get some resolution and possible setup for another book. I think Clark has said he's interested in doing another book in the series. I don't know any more than that. These squiggles, remember how I said a good roller coaster will do more than just go up and come down sharply. A good roller coaster has some twists and some turns, some backward loops, some spirals. I would say right here at the 60% mark and right here at the 90% mark, we get 2 really important information reveals, okay? So the calculated sharing of information can also create a lot of excitement in a book without any physical action whatsoever. And I think while Clark is not short on action, the way that he manages the information of the novel is also very skillful in creating tension. And we get a nice twist here at 60, and we get a nice twist here at 90 that helps crank the excitement of the book, contribute to that rising action. So again, I highly recommend Master of Djinn. And there's my diagram of what it looks like and why it is to be recommended according to the theory of rising and falling action. The next book I'm going to recommend is Justina Ireland's Dread Nation, that I raved about, my favorite zombie apocalypse novel. So again, rising action to about the quarter point, little bit of a plateau, kind of a steady state, until we get to the half mark, rising action again at the half to the 75% mark. I don't think the rising action after 75% in Dread Nation is as sharp as the rise is in A Master of Djinn, but I would say it just builds and builds and builds and builds, and I don't think there's any falling action at the end of this book. There is a sequel, Deathless Divide, that came out in, I think, January of 2020. And Ireland drives straight on ahead into that territory. Ireland is ready to have you put down Dread Nation and pick up Deathless Divide. And I very nearly did. I have other things happening besides my reading list. Or I might have. So this is, I think Dread Nation's just a great example of why that kind of very classic formula works. And again, the thing that she does differently that's at variance is that things just don't drop off at all. There's just a steady build there. The last book that I wanted to talk about in terms of rising and falling action is River Solomon's The Deep that I recently recommended. You're going to notice here at the top, if you look at these numbers, most of these diagrams, I have the 25, the 50, the 75, and the 95% points marked out. The Deep I have marked up differently. Here's the 15% mark, the 38% mark, the 50, the 83, and the 95. I've done this differently because The Deep is a book that moves differently as a novel, as a novella. It's extremely introspective. We spend a lot of time, while there is action, but we spend a lot of time with Yetu, our central character, and really coming to feel Yetu's feelings with her, get in touch with her motivations, and her desires for the kind of world she wants to live in. And because it's so introspective, because we stay so close to Yetu, I would say the movement narratively in The Deep is more like movement in real life. You know, in real life, things don't happen in a tidy or calculated way. And I think Solomon has tried to mirror the letting things unfold more organically. It can feel, it's a different experience as a reader to read a book like this, because it won't, we have a lot of expectations going into reading, particularly going into reading a genre novel. And this is going to frustrate some of those expectations. Things are going to start to move earlier maybe than we're used to. When they do move, they're going to, the plateau is, we are going to see some rising action, but it will also be some more rising action, but it will also be earlier than is typical. And when things start to really move and change, and we get into the, like almost half the book is right here where I've got all these loops and scribbles, okay? This is a really complicated roller coaster, because it's not a roller coaster that goes forward in time. It's a roller coaster that has a lot of flashbacks, It's a roller coaster that has a lot of introspection. It has a lot of loops and turns. It has a lot of kind of side trips in here. Things that will all come together, things that will all be important. But this piece of the novel really is spent not so much in rising tension about how things will be resolved, but in rising tension about how Yetu is going to handle that resolution emotionally. So complicated. That all kind of starts to, that all kind of comes together at about 83% of the way through. So again, earlier than you might expect. Then we have a plateau. Then we have a little steady state, a little flavor of what Yetu's life is like then after, the kind of world that Yetu and the Wajinru, the Mer people, are likely to be able to construct after the events of the story. And then we have a little falling action at the end. So I really enjoyed doing this diagramming. I would encourage you all to consider doing something the same. If you've read books and you wonder about the pacing, you wonder about how certain kinds of effects were achieved, this is a great way to look at the structure of a novel. It's a great way to look at how a writer constructed the story to affect you in the way that it did. So I highly recommend, of course, all the books we've canvassed today, which we have covered previously. And I hope that you keep reading, keep writing, go back to your brainstorming, go back to your outline as you need to, but you're almost there. Keep going, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.